Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. So first off, congratulations to PMAP, to PSOF, and to the AIM for this very, very amazing and inspiring session. And I'm very, very humbled to be here. A little bit of a disclaimer though, I will not claim to be an expert in digital HR management. Like all of you, I come here also as a learner to learn from all of you, perhaps through our conversation, and also to share a bit of how we are trying to deal with this new digital HR management. So I hope you don't mind po if we do this quite informal, and let's just really have a true learning conversation, a learning circle of some sort, okay? I hope I will not bore you to death with too much PowerPoint. But my segment, I really wanted it to be quite simple, practical, something that we can all maybe take some lessons from, some practical tips as well. And I would appreciate it also if you could also share the challenges that you're currently facing as well around this area. Okay, so the topic that I was asked to share about is really about the success and challenges for digital HR management. Okay. Now, actually, the way we looked at it, the success and the challenge that we face today really boils down on the competencies that we all have or we don't have as HR professionals in dealing with this so-called digital HR management. So I'm not going to talk about system, software or hardware, whether it's SuccessFactors, SAP, Power BI, or every other tool that we are currently using or you are using in your respective companies. But I'd like to really focus on the competencies that will help us or could derail us if we do not have a certain set of competencies when we now deal with digital HR. Is that okay? Okay. Okay, Lynn is asking me, hindi niyo raw ako makita sa likod, sa sobrang liit ko. Okay, so I'll just do a bit of sharing. So at Nestle po, we're very, very clear with all of our 100 HR professionals at the company on what's expected from us as HR business partners to all of the businesses that we deal with. As you know, if you're not yet familiar with Nestle, our businesses, sabi nga nila, we start from womb to tomb. Bakit po? Magmula sa pinanganak tayo, may gatas na. Pag medyo sumakabilang buhay tayo, may kape pa. So that's why from womb to tomb. So at Nestle, we have businesses that cuts across from confectionery, so candies and chocolates, to cereals, to milks, to coffee, to food, Maggi Magic Sarap, and Bear Brand, lahat-lahat na yan. But in terms of HR professionals, we're very, very clear as to what's expected of us. So this is a set of competencies that we all learn and equip ourselves to become competent business partners. Now, I will not go through each one of them, although I can, but it will be a 6-day program. But I'd like to focus on the last one. This is all about being an insights advocate. Actually, insights advocate. Advocate is a very, very powerful word. It means advocacy if you really believe in a certain cause. You would move mountains to make something happen. You would move mountains to make changes. And here, in Insights Advocate, why I chose to speak more about this and how it is connected with digital HR, because precisely as being Insights Advocate, we start with the data that we all deal with on a daily basis. So I'd like to start by giving you an understanding of what is Insights Advocate. So to us, Insights Advocate is really how we effectively source, analyze, and interpret all the data that we are faced with on a day-to-day basis. But it's not just about having the data or sourcing the data. What do you do with the data? So the data allows us to generate insights, to generate certain realizations, or certain conclusions that will end up into actions. Actions that will change or that will make things happen. So, what is the most important skill for a very effective HR Insights Advocate? It's really about being familiar with the data that we are dealing with. And we have a lot. It's not true that in HR we're not good with numbers or we don't have the numbers that are important to the businesses that we support. So it all starts with being familiar with the data that we deal with. So why is it important? We go back again, as HR professionals, we all have our goals and our ambitions in our respective businesses and companies we supported. For some of us, our issues, our challenges may be around retention, talent retention, high performer retention, etc. To some of us, it may be about how do you improve the performance of our people? How do you create a culture of high performance? And maybe to some of us, it's about attraction, getting in the right talent at the right time for the right jobs. So successful hiring. Based on these goals, we know we have a long list of levers or instruments or tools that you can use to solve our issues or to achieve our goals. Maybe about rewards, so pay, benefits, maybe leadership development, maybe it's all about the culture, maybe it's about, in this table we were discussing about revisiting your mission, your values, the vision of the company. And then in the end, all of this links to data. And if you think about it, there's so many sources of data. Who among here actually do org culture surveys? Yes, every year, every 2 years. I know of one company, they do it every 6 months. But it's not just doing the survey. What do you get out of the survey, correct? What is it telling you? What are the data that is telling you? Could be about leadership assessments. I'm sure all of us do assessments or focus group discussions with our top leaders or key leaders to understand where they're coming from, to understand their challenges and how we can support them. Skills gap. What else? Training needs analysis. These are the things that we do. And attrition analysis. So, it is important to be familiar with our people data, with our sources of data, to actually know exactly what are the levers that we need to pull, we need to use to, again, achieve our goals in HR. Okay, so far so good? Okay. So at this point, what I'd like to share with you is this framework that we use at Nestle HR, that helps equip our Gen Z, Gen Z HR professionals, as well as the Gen X, pati baby boomers, to refresh them on how to equip themselves on being an HR Insights Advocate. So raising their level of people analytics competency. So I'll just walk you through. There are actually 5 major steps here. And again, it's very practical, quite sensible. I'm sure you all know this, and maybe this afternoon, it's just all about revisiting what are the basics in analytics. Okay, let's start with step one. We don't just go into data for the sake of going into data. We go into it because we want to be able to support our businesses, our company's targets, vision, mission. So the very first step is to really define the challenge or define the business opportunity. Now, defining it, there are basically three things that we need to continue to practice or demonstrate: questioning, challenging, and defining. When we question certain data or certain assumptions, it's important to define, as I said earlier, what is that business opportunity? What is it? What challenge is the business actually facing? Is it about losing talents? Is it about the high attrition of their new hires? Is it about people are resigning or leaving the company because of the leader? So what really is that business challenge or people challenge in a specific company or business? And to always widen our perspective, to look at all the possible options before focusing on a specific aspect. Challenging. It's also important that you work with a group of people in your team that actually has the courage to challenge. Sometimes yun yung difficulty natin, especially when the boss already is talking or the business leader. He's going in one direction, but you feel that we could go to this other direction. And if we don't challenge enough and we don't have the courage to speak up, we won't be able to really lead, co-lead, and be co-pilots with our business leaders. And finally, define. I think this is very basic. You all know that to be able to really pinpoint, laser focus on the specific business challenge, you have to be really specific, measurable, you have to scope it, and it has to be actionable. An example. So in our company, for example, we break down data of attrition when we do attrition analysis in many forms, format. Kumbaga, there are many ways to skin the cat. From your, let's say here, the issue is on attrition, and here we take a look at total employees. We break it down by high performer employees attrition, key talent attrition, and so on and so forth. There's so many ways to cut the data to really arrive with what is really the problem. Step 2, on gathering data, again, this one can be tempting because there could be a lot of data available, but we don't know where to start, where to begin, what data really matters. So you have to start somewhere. You have to start with the basic data that is quite obvious to you or easy to get. But there are also more challenging ways or challenging methods to get certain data that may not be obvious. So it's important to define really your scope, check the integrity of the data. Sometimes we lose our credibility as HR practitioners because the source of our data is already tainted. The quality of the data is not as high. And when a business person, a business leader challenges us na that's not true, this is what it's saying, wala na, tapos na ang game. So it's really important to put credibility and integrity in our data in HR. That's when sometimes automation can help us. Because if our data is housed everywhere and anywhere, it's very difficult to pull the data together. So, in gathering data, it's important to define what is in scope. Again, there are no rules or standards as to what data will be in scope. The important thing is to focus on what is really relevant to that business. When you're identifying sources, don't just settle for quantitative data. Sometimes the context makes it actually richer. That's when you do your focus group discussions. That's when we do our validation of our data. The numbers may be showing this way, but in actuality, there must be a story behind it. So the qualitative and the quantitative data must also be balanced. I already talked about the integrity of data, so it's important to really do data cleanups, data quality checks, and storing our sensitive data in a single repository would be a good help. Okay, talk about that. And then, of course, continuously reviewing our work. If everything is relevant, those that are not relevant, then drop them. It will only confuse us. It will only lead us to maybe the wrong conclusions. Okay. Now, to me, personally, this is the more important part. Because once we've gathered all the data, so what? So what? Do we stop there? Do we just show the data to our business heads and that's it? Of course not. So one of the key strengths of an effective insights advocate is the ability to leverage the data to address that business opportunity that we're being challenged with. So to be able to find insights or conclusions, we need to be able to identify differences or similarities. You could also compare. This is when benchmarking can be useful. It's also good to compare with certain targets or a picture of success so that you can see the gaps. Okay. Some tips. Some of us, we get used to just using Excel or a certain way to show data, but there are so many ways to show data. You could deal with the outliers. If you're looking at performance, you could look at the highest performers in a single unit, for example, or the lowest performers, and then find out the reasons why. You could look at the trends. How come, is it true that after every bonus payout, tumataas talaga attrition? Is it true? We think it's true. In our case, when we took a look at our data, it's not. There were other reasons that were happening around that year, a time of the year that was actually pushing some employees to leave. Or there are other reasons. So the dangerous thing is when we assume, when we make our own assumptions, but our data is telling us another thing. So more tips. How about varying the time periods? Compare your data this year to last year of the same period, or maybe even go back 2 years back, 3 years back. That's another way also of looking at your data. Maybe it will give you, that aha moment, yung hinahanap natin. We talk about comparing your data against targets and benchmark. Are the results positive, negative, neutral? Did we actually improve? Did we lose ground? How does that finding compare with the other departments? Between HR to supply chain to technical to manufacturing, factory A to factory B, until we arrive with a powerful insight. It's important also how we display the data that we see or that we present. Because sometimes it's also in the storytelling. If we are not able to show our data in a compelling way, then we lose already the whole story. And again, the credibility of what we're trying to achieve. So choose the right graphs. There are many, many possibilities or options that you have. Do you want to compare values? Do you want to show the composition of something? Do you want to understand the distribution of your data? Are you interested in analyzing trends and so on and so forth? So my point here is don't just stop with what you see, what is obvious. Get a deeper dive into what your numbers are telling you. And finally, be crisp and be clear on your conclusions. Mahirap din yung marami tayong gustong sabihin, but we can't really pinpoint exactly what. Here's an example of the data that we show every month. So it gives us trends in our headcount planning. It gives us trend on how fast or slow we acquire our talents, how we look at certain, we call spans of control, our service quality, and so on and so forth. But the important thing is, what insights or conclusions can we gain from here? And finally, that will lead us to the actions and the recommendations. Now, do we stop there? Of course not. Once we have reached the point of recommending certain actions or changes, it's important to really make it happen. So I earlier said that storytelling is also important to explain the whys and the hows of our data. How did we arrive to a certain insight? And finally, what are the changes that we want to do? So for example, attrition analysis. What if, for example, we find out that the number one reason for leaving the company is migration? And if it's migration, where exactly are they going? Australia, Canada, the Middle East, the United States. Then what sort of actions can we do? Can we actually stop? Can we actually compete with these companies in terms of pay and rewards? Maybe not. So what do we do? So a possible action, which we actually did in the company, is to work. Well, in a way, it's a good thing. There is Nestle in USA, in Canada, in Australia. We work with our sister companies to be able to retain those talents, work with them, and let those talents work also with Nestle, and we continue to retain them in the bigger group of Nestle, rather than we lose them to competition. So then we arrive with actual solutions, actual recommendations that could help the entire business. So it's important to carry this story. So what is the data telling you? So what? So what is it? And exactly, now what? What do we do? And finally, of course, once the action plans has been implemented, sabi nga nila, if you don't measure, it doesn't get done. So it's important to have follow-up. It's important to set up a certain way of governance to make sure that you're continuously measuring what matters most to your business, what matters most to your business leaders, create those actionable steps, and continue to communicate about it, and continuous follow-up as well. Okay. And finally, on implementing the plan, it's important that we secure the commitment of every action, every player to make it happen. It's important to have regular check-ins with the teams or the people behind these actions to make sure that it is going to have lasting impact and it will be sustained. So, there. It's actually quite a short sharing. I just really wanted to focus that before we overwhelm ourselves with managing digital HR, let's first go back to the basics of the competencies required to really face this new way of working, this new way of managing HR. So I hope my sharing has been useful for you and practical, something that you could actually take and do it once we're all back in the businesses that we support. Thank you very much.